If I can have your attention, please. This is the Subcommittee of Appropriations for Public Safety. We're here to present our recommended budget for these agencies and to have committee action on those so that it can go to full committee. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the tracking sheets for the public safety agencies, and I am only going to go over the matters that are different from the governor's recommendation that the committee has changed. But if there is no I can't hear you when you whisper from the second row. Can you hear me? All right, anyway. It's obviously Monday and everybody's feeling frisky. It will change as the day goes along. If I do not go over a section of the budget, then that means that the committee has acceded to what the request from the governor's office or the agency in the case of the courts was. And I am not going to go over the common changes that deal with changes to health benefit system, the ERS, the workers' comp, technology, and things like that. So I'm only going to go over the items that are not common changes to all of the agencies. We'll start with the Court of Appeals. In item 5.1.2, which was a request for $2,750 for printing cost, the committee decided not to do that. As to item 5.1.5, request for some replacement of some computers, the committee decided not to do that. And that's pretty much for the Court of Appeals. Judicial Council. Currently in the Judicial Council, there are funds for accountability courts. That's $2,263,559 for those courts. What the committee decided to do, because the governor's recommendation was $10 million for accountability courts, in addition to this, be placed in CJCC, which is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and that it made no sense to have two pots of money doing basically the same thing. So what the committee decided to do was to retain the sum of $251,285 and the sum of $178,592 out of that $2,263,559, to retain that for administration of the program and for travel and for staffing for the program, but that the remainder, which is actually grant funds, be transferred to CJCC to be added to the $10 million that the governor had put in, so that all of the grant funds are located in one place. And also there was a request from the Judicial Council for $425,000 for a case management project in conjunction with accountability courts. In the course of the hearings, we found that there are either existing case management programs that are being utilized, or there are case management programs that are free from providers of services to accountability courts, and rather than going out and buying something when the services can be made available free, that we decided that that was the better course, and so we did not fund the $425,000 for the case management project. There's also an addition that was not requested of $50,000 for a family law information center pilot project in the counties of Fannin, Pickens, and Gilmer in the Appalachian Circuit. Judicial Qualifications Commission had requested $106,000 for an investigative staff attorney. We funded that to the tune of $100,000. And that's all for the Judicial Council. There were no changes made to the juvenile courts budget request. Prosecuting attorneys, there was a request to implement a promotional increase for assistant district attorneys, which we denied. There was a request to reinstate state-funded victim advocates, which we denied. There was a request for deferred promotions approved in fiscal year 2009, which we denied. And there was a request for 6 additional assistant district attorneys associated with a proposed 6 new judgeships. We only funded or agreed to fund 2 new judgeships, so we only funded 2 additional assistant district attorneys, and then only beginning January 1, we phased it in over the half of a year rather than a full year. And so that amount in 8.2.4 is $104,522. In Prosecuting Attorneys Council, there was a request for funds for statewide victim witness and grants coordinator, which we denied. There was a request for personal services and operations reduced in fiscal year 2012, which we denied. And there was a request for statewide deployment of the tracker system, which we denied. And those are all the changes in prosecuting attorneys. Superior courts. The superior courts currently are receiving training and continuing education from ICJE, and there was a question as to whether they wanted to bring it in-house or continue to do ICJE. And so the actual budget request had funds in both programs, in-house and ICJE, and so they did not expect to be funded in both places. It was just giving the committee an alternative, and so we elected to fund ICJE, and so we took out the request in 9.1.2 for in-house judicial education training. And so that's not really a cut, that is a choice selection. In the judicial administrative districts, there was a request that the 6 furlough days be reduced to 0 furlough days. We cut that in half, and we reduced the 6 furlough days to 3 furlough days. And so we funded that to the tune of $18,051 in 9.2.1. In 9.3.1, on Superior Court judges, it was the same kind of request. A reduction from the 6 furlough days to 0 was the request. We cut that in half and reduced the 6 furlough days to 3 furlough days and restored $168,558 of funding there. In 9.3.4, that was part of the continuing education, and so we cut out the part that dealt with in-house training. In 9.3.5, we agreed to fund 2 Superior Court judgeships in the Piedmont and Bell-Forsyth circuits, and those are to be funded effective January 1, 2013, so for half of a year. In 9.3.6, 9.3.7, and 9.3.8, this deals with senior judge money. Currently, there are basically 2 different kinds of senior judge funding. One is to assist any circuit in the state where the judges are either overloaded, there may be a judge that is out on sick leave, or there is a death penalty case that's taking a lot of time of a particular judge, and so they need some assistance. And this particular pot of money we have increased in 9.3.8 by $100,000. The second pot of money is one that was put in last year. This is only for circuits that have accountability courts and as a result, the judges that are doing the accountability courts have trouble keeping up with their regular caseload in addition to the accountability courts. And so we put in a funding last year to provide senior judges in those circuits that have accountability courts. That money was sort of a shot in the dark as to how much would be needed, and we've determined that not quite as much as we funded last year needed to be continued in funding, and so we reduced that in 9.3.7 by $50,000, but there's still $250,000 available for that senior judge funding. Then the third funding for senior judges is new funding this year, and it's on 9.3.6, and it's $250,000, and it is for circuits that currently do not have an accountability court but have the census and the support structure that would justify a accountability court, but do not have currently available judges that could handle an accountability court. So if there is a senior judge who has an interest specifically in accountability courts, this money would be available for that senior judge to come and do the accountability courts in those circuits. So the two accountability court senior judge money is for circuits that need help with the regular docket while their judges are doing accountability courts, and then the new pot is sort of the reverse of that, where the existing judge wants to continue working his own docket. Then this would be senior judge money for somebody to come in and actually run the accountability court. In the Supreme Court, we made no changes to their budget requests other than the common changes. Corrections Department, we made no changes other than in 18.11.1 and 18.12.1, and this was just a realignment, and it was basically a clerical change. It was not a substantive change. Department of Defense, in 19.2.1, we added $50,000 so that Georgia can become part of the Interstate Compact, which aids children of military families affected by repeated school transfers. And that's the only change we made to the Department of Defense. Georgia Bureau of Investigation, in lines or tracking sheet 29.3.1, there was funding put in for to retain 27 science positions or scientist positions that had previously been funded with federal funds. We found out after the budget had been prepared, or the governor's budget request had been prepared, that that was not enough to fully retain all of the scientists that we were intending to retain. So we added an additional $200,000 to that. So instead of $1.2 million, it's $1.4 million. In 29.3.2, we have found out that a lot of the scientist positions, after they've been trained for 12 to 18 months and go on staff, that they are then being recruited by other folks, and so we put in a career ladder for those positions and increased the funding by $1,045,000 to retain those scientist positions so that we don't train them and then lose them. In 29.4.1, the original budget request was a reduction of $458,116 to reduce agent positions due to attrition. We felt like that we have already lost more agents than we can afford to lose, so we replaced that money, and so that reduction is no longer in existence. 29.4.2, This is basically to fully staff the Sexual Offender Review Board, and so we just put those positions in the GBI so that they will actually, not only do we transfer the Sexual Offender Review Board to GBI, but we also put the staff in there to allow that agency to function. And so we put that money in at $239,235 and 29.4.2. In 29.4.3, the same issue that we had in the scientist positions, we found that we're losing a lot of agents to other agencies, even police departments, traffic control, FBI, because of the training and just the pay parity issue. And so we instituted a career ladder within the Regional Investigative Services and added $1,388,400 at 29.4.3. In 29.5.2, dealing again with the Sexual Offender Review Board, we converted 2 part-time evaluators and 1 clerk to full-time employees and added $100,213 to that. In 29.5.3, we transferred 4 full-time and 1 part-time investigators from the Sexual Offender Review Board to the Regional Investigative Services, and so that's basically a wash from 29.4.2, so that's a reduction here and to fund the increase in 29.4.2. In 29.6.1, this is the money that the governor's put in for the CJCC for the accountability courts. The governor had put in $10 million with the money that we transferred from AOC for grants for accountability courts. That now is increased to $11,633,682. And the way that we've got it divided up, that the committee discussed, was that there will be basically 3 pots of money in accountability courts, $9,383,682 for felony accountability courts, $1,500,000 for DUI, family and juvenile accountability courts, and $750,000 for a collaborative pilot project with the Department of Corrections in those areas that can't have a full-fledged accountability court but do need some accountability court-like services. In the Department of Juvenile Justice, we made no changes. In the Department of Law, we made no changes. In the pardons and paroles, the budget request had been $1,400,000 in 34.3.1. This is money that was put in as an aid to the accountability courts to provide 20 additional parole officers to implement reentry supervision for offenders, and this is actually as part of the Criminal Justice Reform Council's recommendations. And ultimately, this amount of money will be needed, but it's not going to all be needed. It probably be needed in full the next fiscal year, but it's going to be phased in the 2013 budget year because of the fact that the additional parolees won't all hit the streets on July 1. They will be released periodically during the year. So we reduced that request from $1.4 million to $1 million. And those were the only change that we made in pardons and paroles. Public Defender Standards Council, we made no changes other than to acknowledge that with the creation of 2 new Superior Court judgeships that there would be the need for 2 additional public defenders, and so we have funded that at 36.2.3 beginning January 1, 2013, and it's $53,303. In the Department of Public Safety, 38.5.2, the department had requested additional fuel money. The governor had put in around $700,000 for additional fuel money. We increased that to $900,000. We would like to have done more, but we just didn't have the money to do it. But that is a continuing priority for us, and we'll look at it again in the supplemental budget next year just to see if perhaps we can't bump that a little bit more, because everybody knows fuel prices continue to go up, and probably with that additional money all we're doing is treading water and staying even anyway, but we certainly don't want to go backwards. In 38.6.1, there was a slight change to correct a clerical error in the motor carrier compliance, and so we reduced that request for funding from $207,875 to $172,795, but that's not substantive. That is just an error correction. In 38.9.1, we reduced Firefighter Standards and Training Council budget by $88,394. And that is to encourage that agency to go to an electronic testing and document system so that they don't have to physically view or physically visit every fire station in the state of Georgia to ask for training records, that those can be electronically transmitted and retained. And so that budget reduction was to cut the travel expense to encourage them to go in that direction. $38.11.2 in Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, we were requested to increase funding by $125,000 to allow them to actually use state monies to retain personnel rather than having to go out and obtain the extra money through fees, which is laudable, but at the same time the state should at least pay for personnel operations. And we didn't quite have that much money, but we did increase it by $62,500, which is half of what was requested. In 38.11.3, there was not an original amount in the budget for this, but it's something that happens every 4 years when we run through an election cycle. The law says is that we should fund the newly elected sheriffs for their training and for the month's cost of them being at training, and that was inadvertently left out of the original budget request, and so we put it in at $401,950. And in line 38.12.5, the original budget had a reduction in the North Central Cobb Police Academy of $244,757. We restored $200,000 of that with anticipation that there will be some other changes before next fiscal year. They've been instructed to either be self-sufficient or that the state and Cobb look at perhaps the state taking over that facility, but something different is going to be done next year. And those are all of the changes in Public Safety Department. I would ask the committee if there are any questions about any of those changes. If there are none, do I hear a motion? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. It goes to full committee as presented.